I get asked at least 5 or 6 questions every day that I don't know the answer to. How do I get the answer? This is open for anybody to answer. How do I find the answer?
Jeff, I think since you said you had that stoic personality or touch to you, so I think that would suggest you would probably take your time, look into it, and then maybe get back to them in a couple of days, if you can find an answer.
I make decisions like this. I make decisions like this. So there are ain't no couple days, okay? So it's simple. All I do is I go to Google and I type a long string question. So my question is typically going to be somewhere in the 8 to 15 words. And almost always I can find the answer. I'm a believer that Google is basically, the world's library in your living room or in your pocket if you have a smartphone. And so I don't believe, unless you're doing cutting edge science or anything, that most of the questions that we haven't already been answered multiple times. So I'll give you an example. So I'm 61 years old, and in the United States at 62, there's a security program called Social Security. And if I wanted to learn more about Social Security, I would type out a question like, when I turn 62, what benefits will I gain or lose in Social Security program? So you notice there's about 8 or 10 words in there. And I guarantee you in the first 10 strings on Google, I'll come up with the answer, or I'll come up with a hint. That'll take me to a better question. That'll take me to a better answer. To your point is if I don't know the answer, I'm more than willing to tell you I don't know. But when I say I don't know or I can't find. See, it isn't just I don't know what I can't find. And the reason I'm sharing this with you, I would guess, I don't know how many people we have in here now, 6 times 5. We got 30 some people in here, 38 people. Half of the people here will ask the question before they look in Google. They are just naturally trained. I give you an instruction. Before you even read the instructions, you ask a question. How many of you sat in the classroom? I don't know if this happens in Pakistan, but in the United States, you're given a sheet of paper and it's a quiz. Doesn't matter what the topic of the quiz is, but the instructions at the very top of the page say, read these instructions completely before beginning. Do you know where I'm going with this? What's the last line it says on the bottom of the paper? The last line on the bottom says, since you've read the whole thing, lay your pencil down, you are completed. So you look around the classroom, you got all these people writing like crazy. What did that tell you? They didn't read the instructions, because if they'd read the instructions, they'd laid their pencil down and they were done with whatever that quiz was. And they got an A for that quiz because they actually read the entire thing. Emails are the same way. For example, I have a policy that I use in my company that one email, one question, or one topic. And why I do that is if I get an email that talks about like 6 different things that are totally unrelated, I put that in my whole bucket. When I have some time, I'll answer all 6 questions on 6 different topics. But if you had sent me 6 emails with 6 topics, by the end of today, you'll probably have an answer to at least 5 of them. And one I might have to do a little bit of research. So a big mistake that I see is very lengthy emails and multiple subject items inside that email, and it makes it very difficult for a busy business owner to get you the answer that you need. So those are some things to think about. What other things, I'm going to turn the question around. What other things have you seen watching TV, commercials, read in a book about the United States that you're like, does that really exist?
I would like to say something from my experience when I was previously placed with a client. We all know that US is pretty big geographically and area-wise, but what I came to find out on my own was that it's pretty huge, and that the difference between the people is huge as well. Like it's a lot. When I would be I was cold calling for a while. So when I would be calling people from the south, I would be getting much gentler responses. Like it would actually make me feel good how people were responding to me. But when I moved to, for example, the Pittsburgh area or the Northeast, so things were pretty harsh there. I mean, I found it difficult to not take things personally and recover from their responses. So that's something. Obviously, it's everywhere. Like people are different along with the areas, but in the US, it's very stark. Probably because it's pretty huge and people are very different. So yeah, that's what I learned a lot.
Yeah, no, there is a great observation. You're right. Basically the United States probably breaks down into 7 or 8 different regions that you're talking about. So just if you go just to the East Coast, you have on the East Coast of the United States, you have like Florida, Georgia, down there, that's the Southeast. Much typically more laid back, more casual in the way they speak, more casual in the way they talk. But actually, funny thing is probably more formal in how they dress. Then you go up the coast to around the Washington, D.C. area, and that's pretty busy, pretty active because you have the seat of government there. And then when you go to, as you said, New England, but especially like, say, New York State, they can be very brash, very bold. What do you want?
Yes.
Right? Hurry up, tell me what you need. Why am I talking to you? And if you didn't expect that, you will totally be caught off guard that, first 25 phone calls that you make, because you're like, they're mad at me, and they're not mad at you. That's just how they function. That's what I was talking about earlier about the difference between the Commonwealth and the empire building that, basically Britain did, I don't know, 200, 300 years ago, and the United States. It's just different. And I see it all the time. But that's a great observation. What other observations do you have?
I'd like to add something here.
Yep.
Since depending on the movies and whatever the stuff I read in the news or something, US is made up of a lot of immigrants, right? And
right.
Some people say that the natives, the Native American, there are not a lot left. And like the vice president is American Indian. Her mother was Indian. So is there like a cultural shift considering, a lot of immigrants in the United States?
Well, it comes back to, again, regions. Some regions have been, almost completely immigrants. Okay. And then you go to the Northeast. This is kind of part of the Northeast. And they talk about, their great grandfather came to the United States on the Mayflower, so very traditional British upbringing, and they brought that here. For a lot of years, we used to say that in the United States, we were a melting pot. We took all these different countries, all these different cultures, and melted them together into what is the culture of the United States today. Recently, we've seen more written about it's really more like a salad bowl than a melting pot, because we don't want everybody to kind of become the same. We don't want that type of excuse me thing. We want everybody to bring their uniqueness together, and then the culture we're trying to build, and it's taking time, is respecting everybody's differences And again, looking at how those differences can make our lives better overall. So we see more of that today than say we did. And then we can go. So, all right. So I've used up I'm called the warm-up act. Okay.
Yeah.
So Saad, are you ready to do your presentation?
Yeah, I am. Let me just share my screen.
If you have additional questions, please put them in the chat. We'll answer your questions today.
Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. So hi everyone, my name is Saad Arshad, and I'm hired as a digital marketing associate here at RepStack. I've been working with a client for around about 3 months. And I started in RSA, which is helping me a lot while working with the client. And today I'll be talking about creativity and problem solving with help of Jeff Fisher. So this is a brief outline of my presentation. I'll define creativity and how it is applied on personal and organizational level, and we'll look at real life examples. Then we'll define problem solving, and we'll do the same for that. Then there's a term called creative problem solving, and we'll look into that. And I have a very interesting case study in the end, which is how Ford beat Ferrari with the help of a Scotch tape. So let's talk about creativity defined. Creativity, to break it down, is use of imagination to create something. Like we have seen Steve Jobs create iPhone, which revolutionized the mobile world. We have seen Elon Musk design electric cars, designed rockets, and we have seen Jeff Bezos starting a whole new marketplace online called Amazon. And creativity is something that varies from person to person depending on multiple factors. It can be your level of knowledge, your education. Maybe if I'm living in Pakistan and someone is living in US, his creativity would be better than me, considering he's living in a more developed country and he has more successful people around me who can help him in thinking. So it really varies from person to person, and it is subjective. So Jeff, would you like to add anything here?
Yeah. So remember, creativity, most people make the mistake of thinking creativity is like, I know how to paint, I know how to do sculpture, those types of things. So creative, if you will, but there's a lot of creativity that you're going to hear about here today that is also very business related. And you noticed in the first slide, a lot of that's called creative problem solving, so looking at something that maybe two things exist simultaneously, and you figure out how to put those two things together to make it a better product, a better service, or whatever for your client. So creativity is not just about the arts. It's not just about music. It is also in business and everywhere we go. Back to you, sir.
So let's talk about creativity on a personal level first. So if you want to be more creative, then you have to try some of these things. You have to try new things more often. For example, you go to the gym regularly and maybe try a new exercise, maybe try, deadlift or something like that. Then the best way, that is a proven formula, is read books, watch and listen podcast. I personally like the podcast of Joe Rogan, Gary Vaynerchuk, and in Pakistan, there's one very famous Thought Behind Things. And is there anyone who can suggest some good podcasts and books here that might be helpful for everyone here? Anyone?
I kind of regularly listen to the Joe Rogan podcast. Joe Rogan Experience is actually pretty nice because it catches you up to what's happening in the world on a daily basis, and kind of just gives you a big picture view of what's happening. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, and the advantages of podcast, I see that you don't have to take out time to listen. Then maybe if you're sometimes I do is while I'm working, I play the podcast in the background, or if I'm going for a drive, I instead of music sometimes I play the podcast. So that really helps, because it gives you different point of views of things and it gives you exposures of things. Similarly, it comes from the book. I'll suggest a book that is called Shoe Dog. It is a biography of founder of Nike. It is very well written, and I'd suggest everyone, if you have time, then do read it. So the next thing is write. At every point in life, someone faces a term called creative block. When you are, you can't think of anything, you're stuck in a situation, you can't think outside the box basically. So just what I do is just grab a piece of paper and a pen and just write it down. Write your thoughts. Basically, have a talk with yourself, communicate with yourself. It will really help you, to get that ideas out of your mind and come to a conclusion, finding a solution. So this is something that is what I've been doing lately. Say more yes than no. This will also help a lot. For example, your friends are going to an event or a seminar, and maybe you're not that interested to go, but I think sometimes you have to say yes, because you never know. Maybe you find new people there who have the same interests as you, or maybe you find someone that are you can learn new things from them. So try new things, say more yes than no. Then again, doing things that you're afraid of. Again, the gym example, many people are afraid of deadlift, which is a back exercise. It's because it's a bit risky, but obviously if it's done well, it is very good for your body. And again, meeting new people, like the example I gave about the seminar. So Jeff, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, so these are all great points in the writing. I totally agree with what's being said. I mean, just grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, find a very comfortable chair where you like to sit, inside, outside, doesn't really matter. And then just start writing down what things are coming into your mind, even if you're not sure why you're writing them down in the beginning. And a lot of times that's where creative problem solving comes. You can write a simple statement like, I'm tired of how this room looks. Okay, so I'm tired of how this room looks. Why am I tired about how this room looks? Well, when we painted it 2 different colors. Why does it matter if it's 2 different colors? Me personally, because you're talking about yourself, I prefer one color throughout the entire room. I hate the floor covering in this room. Why do you hate the floor covering in this room? And all of a sudden, by the end of that simple statement at the top, when you get to the bottom, you'll have a creative solution for that room. I mean, this is really simple stuff, but I'm going to paint the walls over so they're all one color. I'm going to pull out the current carpet or floor covering. I'm going to put in solid wood floors or tile floors, and you're going to have a creative idea then what to do with that room. If you hadn't taken the time to sit down, you might have painted the room, but you wouldn't have necessarily changed the floor covering because it didn't even enter your mind at that point in time. Back to you.
Okay, so let's talk about creativity on an organizational level. It starts obviously from the top, but the successful organizations, what they do is they give everyone a chance. Like in every department, they respect everyone's feedback, because obviously if there are thousands of employees, they'll have thousands of point of views, thousands of opinions. So maybe 10 of them, if are good enough, they'll definitely contribute in the creativity of the organization. Then you have to reward creativity, because when you reward, obviously you'll see that more people would be interested, they will be more motivated. Then to increase creativity in your organization, some companies do is they offer flexible hours to employees. There are some people who who aren't comfortable working 8 hours straight, or like working 9 to 5. They can these are the most examples are like programmers. They like to work in flexible hours when they are fresh and everything. So these are something that companies are doing. Then you have to avoid employee burnout. Don't, give overtime to your employees. Don't contact them outside work hours, and if you feel that your employees are feeling tired, just communicate with them, have a chat with them of what's happening. Then recently, in countries like Ireland, there's a new concept called the 4 days work week, which is in its initial stage. I'd say like it's sort of in its case study stage, where they are, trying the 4 days work week in different companies. So far, it is producing positive results because the employees are looking forward to a longer weekend, and that what keeps them motivated to work 4 days throughout the week. Then mental health is a great problem of this generation. And some of the leaders, the motivational speakers like Simon Sinek, he talks a lot about this. He gives his employees mental health break. It's clearly written in the contract. If you are not mentally feeling well, you can take these number of days off. So this is something that really, contributes in the creativity of the employees and our organization. Then 3M, we all know, is a very famous company. All these cat eyes that we see on our highways and expressways, these are made of 3Ms and office supplies and adhesives and the things like these. So what 3M does is they started doing this around 5 years ago. Once or twice a week, they gather all the people from different departments in their respective departments. What they do is they give them a paper and a pen, and they say, okay, you have 1 hour or any 30 minutes, just write down how we can improve our organization, what products should we add, what services should we add, or like something in our values or anything, the strategies. So how we can be more successful. So this is a great example. They're giving everyone a chance. And again, if they're 1,000 employees, everyone is writing 2 ideas, you have 2,000 new ideas. And even if 5 are good enough, you have 5 new ideas to move forward. So this is something that, many companies should implement, considering the 3M case model. So Jeff, anything to add here?
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic, obviously, with people having to move and work from home, has definitely been a huge shift in the way we believe work needs to be done. It'll be interesting, like you mentioned, the 4-day work week. It'll be interesting as things start to sort themselves out in the United States, because I do, a lot of recruiting for very large corporations. One of the big questions is always, can this job be done remote? And if it can, what are we going to do? And so what we're seeing a lot of large corporations do is go more to a hybrid model, what they call a hybrid model, where maybe you're in the office 2 days a week and you work from home 3 days a week. So now that we have that hybrid model, see, I would do exactly what you said, like 3M does. I would get all my people together and I'd say, okay, we've decided, excuse me, we've decided that we're going to come into the office 2 days a week and we're going to work from home for 3 days a week. Give me your best ideas. And everybody gets a piece of paper and they write their best ideas. And then you put them all together, and even with 36 people here, we would have probably 18 different ideas. So we match up the ideas that are the same, and we still have, say, 18 ideas left. Then we prioritize those ideas and we take what we think are the 3 most beneficial for everybody, beneficial for the company, beneficial for the employee, and we implement them. All right. So we put those things in place, whatever they may be. So like in my company, all of our meetings happen between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Central Time. Our main office is in Texas. And so everybody that works for my recruiting company has to be available between 10 and 2. And we didn't come up with that easily. That took some time to figure out. But then what that does, everybody has to be available for this block of time. But then we respect the fact that outside of those hours, some people like to work in the early day, some like to work in the night. We've got a couple of people that are in Pakistan and the Philippines that work that 10 to 2 Central Time, and then they do the rest of their work in their own time zone during the day, you know, because they've decided that's what works best for them. So that creativity continues to evolve. So imagine now we've got the list, we sorted it to 18, we chose the top 3, we implemented it, and now we're going to come back 45 days later and we're going to say, okay, same question. Now, based on what we've done, what other great ideas or what other things can we accomplish by having a hybrid model? And everybody's going to write their answers down again. Now, remember, the answers are going to be different for some people this time than they were last time, right? So again, you're going to get some number of creative ideas. You're going to take the top 3 and you're going to implement those throughout the company. Maybe this time it takes 4 or 5 months to get those implemented. And then you're going to bring the whole company back together. You do this constant striving for creativity. I can tell you that without the pandemic, that conversation would have taken another 20 years to have. So, you know, there's a lot of things about the pandemic that can be said, but creativity is actually, especially in the workforce, has definitely 10 to 20 years ahead of what it would have been without the pandemic. Back to you, sir.
So let's talk about the next thing, that is problem solving. Problem solving is obviously, you know, finding the process of finding a solution to a problem. And essentially it has 4 main steps, like identifying the problem, defining the problem, exploring options, and taking action. I'll demonstrate this with my own personal example. So when I was onboarded with my client, he runs an e-commerce company. So my client was working with a marketing agency already. He paid them a lot of money to create the website and for the Facebook ads. But for the 3 months, they were struggling because they weren't able to get the idea what my client wanted. They went back and forth, but you know, the website design wasn't just up to mark what my client wanted. So when I came in, because I had the experience of e-commerce, so my client, you know, we had 2 to 3 meetings. He said, this is what I'm facing. This is your number 1 task. You have to get me the website done as soon as possible. They're not getting my idea. So I took out as much as information I could get from him. And I was saying that the website team that he hired, it wasn't good enough, but he paid them a lot of money and the company was started. So what I decided that I can create websites my own from Shopify. I created a simple mock-up site in which I added images. I created a beautiful homepage and I showed it to my client and he said, this is exactly what he wants. So I sent that same page to the website company. I said, okay, now you don't have to think, you just have to copy this in your database, design this, add products, you know, do the SEO and everything. And that worked. So the problem here, what was, I identified the problem, that was the communication gap. We defined that, we explored options where we either look for a new company, which would be expensive because he paid them $10,000 already. Then other option was I'd make a mock-up website and send it to the company. And that is how I took the action and that how it worked. So anything here, Jeff?
No, that's a great example of, you know, sometimes you hire outside vendors to do the work, but they don't just see what exactly you're trying to get across. So setting in several meetings sometimes will get you to the problem a lot faster. I'm a big believer in drawing pictures, so I use screen capture a lot. So, you know, I've built I don't know, 400 or 500 websites my company's built over time. And so if I say, put the button, you know, I'm going to send this over an email, put the button in the upper right-hand corner and make sure you don't get it too close to the edge. Okay, well, that is very subjective, right?
Yeah.
But if I take a screenshot of the homepage and I say, put the button right here, just like what Saad's saying, this is where I want the button. I want it exactly this distance from the right margin. I want it exactly this distance from the top. I want the button to be 3 inches long. I want it to be in bright red. Here's the exact hex code. I'm going to get what I want. and so it's always finding a way to solve problems. One of the things that I learned along the way is just take a simple doc, I don't care, Word or Google or whatever, and put a table on it. And on the on the left hand, put an image of what you're talking about, and then right there, write down what you're talking about you want fixed. Then take your next image and put it in a table right below it and review the entire website that way. And so instead of looking at the whole homepage as one big thing, we would call that the elephant, okay? It's huge. What we're gonna do is we're gonna figure out how to eat the elephant one bite at a time. So we're gonna look at the upper corner of the homepage on the right, upper corner on the left, center. Then we're gonna move down a little ways. Then we're gonna talk about the main image or hero image, it's sometimes called. And then we just walk it through. Send that off to your designer, your developer, and all of a sudden in days, you have what you want instead of what could have taken months and months and months. The big thing in your position, again, is kind of where I started this conversation, is make sure you're letting your client know what you are good at doing, what problems you're good at solving, because they may not think about that as a capability that you bring to the table. Back to you, sir.
So this was, I defined a problem and I told you guys the solution. Now I'd like some volunteers. Any problem that you faced at your workplace and how did you solve it? Anyone would like to volunteer here?
I think you have to pick, they won't volunteer.
Okay. Hi Vikas, can you like contribute something here? Any problem that you faced in your work or maybe your university life or something and you solved it?
Hello, this is Vikas. I recently joined RSA. I'm in RSA Academy as a sales associate. Well, to talk about my previous experience, I was working in sales development associate in TruckX, where I was totally new to trucking products, the devices that have been used in the trucking industry, GLDs. Well, I was still a trainee and I was on a call with the customer, and the customer, I was not able to understand what customer needs are. So what I did, I told the customer that I will be needing some time to go through your problem, and I took the help with my manager, and then we solved the problem in initial time that I have given to him, and then we solved their issue that they were facing at that moment.
Yeah, okay, great. That is a great example. So now let's move forward. Now let's talk about problem solving on a personal level. I'll just quickly go through it because we talked about it in the previous slides. So obviously break down the problem as Jeff and I agreed on. Get a piece of paper, write it down, take advice from relevant people. If it's a problem in your organization, you feel something at your work, take advice from your managers, from your coworkers, analyze consequences, and obviously look for alternatives. Then there's a famous Elon Musk's 3-step problem solving trick. For example, I'll demonstrate this with an example. You want to start a business, but you think that, oh, a business will cost me a lot of money, but it is your assumption. So the first thing you have to do is remove assumption. Have statistical data. You want to start an e-commerce store, just do the research. What would the packaging cost me? What would the marketing cost me? How much the shipping would cost me? And if you're manufacturing it yourself, how what manufacturing would cost me? So now you have the numbers. You don't have to assume. Maybe you thought, okay, the business would cost me $2,000 to start, but basis on these data, it will cost me 1,000. So here your assumption is removed. Now you have to break down that problem as we talked about earlier. Then you have to create solution. Now you are down to $1,000, but you still think this is a lot of money. So now you have to create solutions. Maybe if you are, maybe you can look at a drop shipping model where you don't have to own any inventory. Maybe you can, compromise a bit on the packaging side. Maybe you don't have to start with a fancy box or something. Just start with a nice gift bag. So this is the model that Elon Musk applies in his 3 or 4 companies that he owns, and it has been successful over the years. Anything to add here, Jeff?
The key there that you saw there was the break down the problems. That's what I'm talking about. If you look at the whole elephant and how you're going to eat the elephant, it's overwhelming. But if I take a small piece of the problem and I say, let's solve this first, I'll go back to my example. What color are we going to paint the room? We voted and we all like white. Okay, so now we know it's white. So we've eliminated one of the issues. And we keep breaking it down like that. Okay, I don't like the floor covering. Okay, what are the options for the floor covering that we would like? And so you go through that process, continuing to break it down until it becomes a manageable problem. The other thing is take advice from relevant people. I think that's really important. Don't take advice from people you don't like, don't respect, unless you're looking for confrontation. Otherwise, you want to stay away from that because you're looking to solve a problem that you have right now and not necessarily wanting to have a long internal debate. Back to you.
Okay, now let's talk about problem solving at an organizational level. Let's demonstrate again this with an example. So for example, you're a CFO of a company and you're saying that your overheads are a lot, which are damaging your profit. Okay, so now you have obviously a team working with you. You take that input from your team. Okay, we are facing a lot of overheads, which is damaging our profits. So what do? You take different opinions from different people. That would really help. Look what competitors are doing in this day and age. You can simply, with the help of internet, you can have the transparency of seeing how the competitors are, reducing their cost. Maybe, they have outsourced some of the departments, or maybe, they have merged some of the departments, or even like compromised on their packaging or everything. Then you have to identify your KPIs. KPIs are key performance indicators. So in this case, as this is a financial problem, your KPIs can be your net profit, your return on investment, return on assets. So you don't, have to, your decisions should be based on statistical numbers, the KPIs, so that, okay, if our profit margin was 20% before, now it's 30%. We have seen the improvement because of the reduction in overheads. So now you can see that, okay, the problem is solved. So this is very important. Then conduct a new SWOT analysis. Maybe, a competitor has entered the market. Now it's a new threat. Maybe a competitor went bankrupt and he's out of the business. Now it's an opportunity. You can tap into his customers. Then a very interesting example of Beachtree Pakistan, which is a clothing brand for women here in Pakistan. So many of you may know that into last year, Google published a case study on Beachtree. So what Beachtree did was, when COVID hit, obviously all the stores were shutting down. The people were, the businesses were facing losses, and they were waiting for the situation to get better. But Beachtree went, outside the box. It thought outside the box. What they did was, they had their website, they had their Facebook and Instagram pages, but they were doing that for the sake of formality. They were not, paying attention to that. So what they did was, they invested all their money in the marketing for Facebook and Google ads, and that worked for them there, because everyone else was not paying attention towards it, and they made the early move, which helped them, and their sales were literally quadrupled within a month. And once the store opened, they didn't have enough inventory to display them in the stores. So this is how Beachtree, they took advantage of the situation. They saw that, okay, everyone is at home, no one can go outside, people were still buying things, staying at home, and they saw the opportunity and they used it perfectly. Anything to add here, Jeff?
No, I think that's a great example you just gave right there. That's good.
Now moving to the last part, that is creative problem solving. Creative problem solving is that when the conventional way of thinking it's not working, and you have to really be creative, really go outside the box, think of a solution to make it work. And now I'll move to the best part of the presentation. It's how Ford beat Ferrari with a Scotch tape. So historically speaking, in 1960s, the racing cars were, the racing industry was booming in America and Europe, and Ford Motors wasn't in the racing industry. So what Ford was a big company at the moment. Ferrari wasn't. So Ford tried to buy Ferrari, but they went on a meeting, but Ferrari, they weren't interested at all. So Ford felt a bit ashamed. So what they did was they said, okay, we'll design our own motor cars. And Ferrari was at the top of the racing industry at that point. So what Ford did was that, okay, we'll design our own racing cars. They hired an outside company called Shelby Company Limited, which was owned by an ex-racing driver. So they gave him the task that, you have to design good cars that can compete Ferrari in the races. Initially, they faced the problem that cars weren't good enough, that they broke down in the middle of races, they couldn't compete. So there were a lot of problems. So they gave, at this point, there was a lot of involvement from Ford's team in the racing department. So what they decided is, okay, the driver and the mechanic has now the full freedom. He can decide what's the problem. So the driver took the car to the spin, and he realized that the car is too heavy. But there was a computer installed inside the car that was analyzing data, what is happening with the car. So he said that the air is entering inside the car and it's not going out, which is going against the speed, which is making the car slower, but it wasn't shown on the computer. So he simply took out the computer as shown in the picture. They both, pasted Scotch tape all over the car with loose ends. And when they drove the car, judging by the direction of the Scotch tape, they realized that, okay, the air is going inside the car, it's not going out. That is why their speed is, not what they want. And they eventually moved so many parts outside of the car, and they were able to reduce the weight of the car to 14 pounds. And for the next 4 years, Ford managed to win 4 races all over the continent. They beat Ferrari in every race. They took the position 1, 2, 3. So this is a great example of creating problem solving. Like in this example, the computer wasn't telling that what is wrong with the car, but the guy, he went on completely conventional. He simply took Scotch tape, pasted it on the car, and saw, by judging the direction of the Scotch tape, he came to the conclusion that air is going inside the car, but not going out. Anything to add here, Jeff?
Oh, that's a great example of creativity right there. We got a problem. We have to throw away conventional wisdom. We got this computer that should be telling us the answers, but it's not. And sometimes it's just stepping back and using your brain to, figure it out. So that's a great example of using creative problem solving. And it's also at the beginning where I talked about creativity is not just music, it's not just art, it's also used in business. And here's a perfect example.
So that's all from my side. And any last notes, Jeff?
So there's a question over here, big picture. So being the chief growth officer, what sort of vantage point on the company? What sort of things are you looking at? What does your day-to-day look like? So is it Abdul? Is that?
Yeah, I go by the moment.
Okay. So I attend about 4 different meetings a week. And in addition to that, I work on particular issues. So as Noreen pointed out, when I first started early on, I was in several meetings and we realized that one of the reasons that we were struggling to keep clients was we didn't have a standard approach to the associates that we brought in. So that's how RepStack Academy got designed. I helped Noreen put basically a core structure together, and we talked about it. Again, this is back to that creative problem solving. And the way that process worked is we would talk about it. Noreen would go away for, 3 days, 4 days, and then she would do what we had talked about. And then we would come back and we kept shaping and molding it till we have the product today. Right now, I'm working on, last week, I was working on pay structures. So across the entire company, if you come here at RepStack, what's your 3-year career path? You know, what are you going to do? How are you going to advance? What are you going to learn? How much are you going to get paid? So I worked on that. This week and for the next 4 weeks, I'm working on RepStack sales process. And again, because I gave you that list of all the things I've experienced in my life, I can look at it from a totally different perspective and, you know, give some good ideas. In addition to that, for the last 3 years prior to coming to RepStack, I was the chief coach, the growth coach for a 7-figure agency. So I did that for 3 years. So I saw a lot of different companies, a lot of different ways that people are doing things. So day to day, it's usually 1 to 2 hours a day that I have in my calendar that I'm working on things for RepStack, and the other, 40, 45, 50 hours a week is working on Diverse Recruiting Experts, which is my headhunting company. All right, any other questions? Otherwise, we're going to wrap this up. I hope everybody got something. Remember, the whole idea in this 1 hour is you need to leave this meeting with 1 to 3 new ideas that you can put in place for you personally or professionally. You know, too often people set in an hour seminar and at the end they say, I got nothing out of that. And I'm like, you're telling me you sat there for an hour and you didn't hear 1 good idea. You didn't have 1 new thought about how to solve a problem. And when I asked the question that way, they're like, oh yeah, here's 2 things I'm going to change in my business, in my personal life, whatever it is. So as you guys start out your career, keep that in mind. That's what you're looking for in each one of these different seminars that you go to where you have people speaking, is what's some minor changes that can have major impact in your life. So thanks for your time today, everybody. I will see you in a month.